Hey, fifth grade. Today I'm going to be talking to you about hierarchies. With a hierarchy, you have categories and you have subcategories. This is one example of a hierarchy. There's many different ones that you could create or think of. For this one, I'm starting with students in my class. The hierarchy that I chose to create, the category, is students in my class. Every single time I add a subcategory under my hierarchy, I'm going to give it one more attribute. I'm going to add something more specific each time. Here's what I mean. Our category that we're starting with is students in my class. Everything that I put under this has to be about students in my class, but it's going to get more specific each time. It's going to add a certain attribute each time to each one of my subcategories. So again, I'm starting with students in my class. One attribute, one specific thing that I chose to add to my next subcategory, students in my class with a sibling. Here's where it's interesting. Every single subcategory, everything above it is also true. So students in my class with a sibling, doesn't it also have to be true that they're a student in my class? Absolutely. But if I add another one, another subcategory, I add something even more specific. Students in my class with a brother. Doesn't it have to be true that students in my class with a brother also have a sibling and they're also in my class? This is just one example of a hierarchy. You could even add more subcategories under it. You could add students in my class with just one brother. Because doesn't it have to be true that if they have one, at least if they just have one brother, they also, of course, have a brother. They also have a sibling, and they're also in my class. You could add many different subcategories, getting more specific, adding an attribute each time. Here's how it would look if we chose to create a hierarchy of quadrilaterals. So, my category here is quadrilaterals. This is my category. Each subcategory that I place under my category of quadrilaterals is going to add a certain attribute. It's going to get more specific each time. And there's many different ways you could do this. There's not just one way, but I'm just going to give you a few examples. Next, for my first subcategory, I'm going to write parallelograms. Now, here's why this can be a subcategory. All parallelograms have to have four sides. Remember, quadrilaterals are any shape with just four sides. Parallelograms always have to have four sides, but there's a certain attribute that I added here. A parallelogram also has to have two pairs of right angles. Two pairs of parallel sides. A parallelogram has to have two pairs of parallel sides. So, I'm just going to draw a couple of them, just a couple examples. Y'all know I can't draw very well. Here's one parallelogram. Two pairs of parallel sides. Here's another parallelogram, two pair of parallel sides. Ooh, I gotta redraw that one. This is also a parallelogram. I know this is not perfect, but all three of these shapes have two pair of parallel sides. And they also have four sides. They're also quadrilaterals. Because remember, every time you add something, it also has to be true for everything above it. So another subcategory that I can add here, rectangles. Let me just draw a couple. And remember, with a rectangle, what is that certain attribute that we added here? Goodness, I'm sorry, y'all. This is terrible. Okay, that's better. The certain attribute that we added, in addition to having two parallel sides, a rectangle also has to have what? 4 right angles. So, before we add another subcategory, remember, all rectangles are also parallelograms. They also always have to have 2 parallel sides, and they're also always quadrilaterals. They always have 4 right angles. But is every parallelogram a rectangle? No. We see right here with this parallelogram, does it have 4 right angles? No. Rectangles are always parallelograms, and they're also quadrilaterals. Parallelograms are always quadrilaterals, but it doesn't have to be true going down because you're adding something more specific. You're adding a certain attribute each time. One more that we could add is a square. Now think to yourself, what is the attribute? What is the specific thing that we added this time that a square has to have that a rectangle doesn't? 4 equal sides. So, one more time. All squares are also rectangles. They are also all parallelograms. They're also all quadrilaterals. Everything above it, all of the subcategories and categories above it also have to be true. Let's do one more with triangles. So, my category this time is triangles. Every subcategory I put under this, they all have to be triangles. So, let me just draw a couple pictures. We know there's tons of triangles. This is a triangle. This is a triangle. This is a triangle. We're going to get more specific each time. Next, my first subcategory that I'm going to create, I'm just going to add one specific attribute this time. Isosceles triangles. Now, what is the specific attribute that I am adding when I say isosceles triangles? Well, if you remember, an isosceles triangle has to have at least 2 sides that are equal. So, it can be like this one. These 2 are equal. It can be like this one. Maybe all 3 could be equal. That's going to be useful in just a minute. One more subcategory I want to add is equilateral triangles. Now, in the word equilateral, you hear the word equal. That means that all sides have to be the same. So, here's why this makes sense. Every equilateral triangle, if it has 3 equal sides, doesn't it at least have 2 equal sides? That's how an equilateral triangle is also an isosceles triangle. And of course, equilateral triangles, isosceles triangles, they're all triangles. Those are 3 different kinds of hierarchies, but again, there's many different ones that you could create. Just remember, your category is what you're starting with. And your subcategory, they're what you add under your category, adding a specific attribute, a specific detail each time.